So welcome you all to this round of your Co-op Conversations 2021. Meet your Board of Directors and Member Engagement Committee. Just quick introductions. I'm the Society's Secretary. I've been with the Society for since 2003 and been Secretary since 2005. My name's Edward Parker. Tara?
Yeah, Tara Simmons. I'm the General Manager for Cooperative Social Responsibility, and I act as Secretary to the MEC, Member Engagement Committee.
If I look that way, it's because Tara sat at some distance from me just over there, so just so you know. Some of you will be familiar with the sessions we've been holding just over this last week or so, but here's the standard procedures for housekeeping. We're recording the event, so please be aware of that, and if you don't want to be recorded, if you could turn your camera off. If you could keep your microphones muted unless you want to speak, that just prevents feedback issues and so forth. Questions, the best way is probably to raise your hand in the chat function, which hopefully we'll be able to see properly, and we're being ably assisted by Anna O'Leary, one of my colleagues, who can alert us to that. But also you can type in the chat function and, if necessary, wave your hand, but your camera needs to be on, but hopefully we'll be able to see that too. So that's probably preliminaries done. And just again, those who've been to these sessions before, here we are, this kind of open forum. No holds barred, so to speak. So, you know, please feel free to ask any questions you have, because that way we'll just generate better discussion. Next slide, Anna. There we go. So we have here today a set of directors. I don't think Olivia's joined us yet, but we've got Helen Wiseman, the Society's president. Matt Lane, I've seen, is on. Bernadette. Bernadette has to leave a little early today, unfortunately, but there we are. I know Barbara's there, and Henry, who you've been hearing about going for a meal on Friday by the sounds of things, from the MEC. And I'm not sure that we've seen Chaz on. Oh no, there's Olivia. Good, I've seen your hand.
I am here. Can
good,
you
good.
hear me? I am here. I've had trouble.
Oh, great. So Henry's representing the MEC, but I know that some of the board members here have been on the MEC, so we'll be able to talk equally about being on the MEC as well. So welcome to all of them. And then we've got a number of members, it looks like 4 or 5, who are interested in hearing this session. So thank you for joining us. Hopefully, as I say, this is a fairly select group. So we've got some slides which we'll whistle through very quickly, and then let's get on to discussion and questions, because that's probably going to be the most fruitful part of today. So the next slide, Anna, if you don't mind, and if you could play. This is, again, standard fare for these conversations, and some of you will have seen this before, but it doesn't take long. Just a quick video on what the Society does. Thanks, Anna. As I say, that's probably familiar to those of you who've seen, been to these conversations before, and hopefully you're all aware of the activities the Society gets up to. A little snapshot there. So here again, another little snapshot. These are your board of directors, 16 directors in all, current directors. A number of these directors are up for election this year, as is the way of things. If you just move on, Anna. You're going to press the next slide, Anna. I'm ready to go. Thanks. Here we go. And here's what reads as a fairly dry list of what the board does. It comes across, as I say, a little dry, but in the actuality, when you're trying to put this into practice, I'm sure it's much more interesting and engaging than what this list puts forward. In one respect, arguably, this is just a list of what any good board does. Save that, of course, we're a cooperative society, so the first 2 points are unique to cooperatives and are very important and run as a key thread throughout all the board's deliberations and activities. I won't go through these. Perhaps some won't come as a surprise. Perhaps you think, oh, that's unusual, if you're not used to perhaps what a board does. But I think it's a fairly normal list of what directors get up to in an organisation, coupled then with, of course, the important cooperative elements. And then, Tara, it's your go next on the MEC. So if we move on, Anna.
Indeed. So good evening, everybody, and some familiar faces that you will see that are current members of our Member Engagement Committee, chaired by Chaz at the moment. And as you can see, we have a number of colleagues who sit part of this MEC. I'd like to point out a couple of things. A couple of these colleagues are ex-directors, or an ex-director, which is Jean Nunn-Price, but also we have Barbara Rainford and Wendy Willis that are currently the board representatives who sit on the MEC. Also to point out, James Eales and Rhys Fallon are our two current MEC young member representatives. And I'm delighted to say that this year we are introducing dedicated roles for our young members through our young member network, and you will see those in this year's election. So they are for members particularly under the age of 30, and we're looking for three roles, three representatives on the MEC for this year for the first time. And again, very much, next slide please, Anna. As Edward has advised, the roles of the MEC there sound, pretty plain really when you put them down on paper, but a huge amount more of discussion. The MEC are responsible for really bringing our management to account with regard to what we said we're going to do around our member engagement strategy, for measuring and influencing very much how that strategy is delivered and how we can improve member engagement for all members who are members of Mid-Counties Co-operative.
So we can walk on.
So what's involved, Edward? Yeah,
I'll just quickly run through. I know when members are considering putting themselves forward for the board or for the MEC, generally actually it's the practical questions that get asked. And so here you are, here's some practical things. Of course, they're member meetings we would expect board members and MEC members to attend. Of course, the board meetings where the key elements of business and decisions are made. We have, well, they're held monthly. Various committees the board members would stand on, some half-day strategy sessions, a lot of background reading and thinking learning. So that all sums to quite a lot of work outside of standard board meetings. And it's a commitment that my observation would be over the years that surprises people how much is involved. So it would be unfair not to put that across, that there is a lot of work involved. But then, of course, the more you put in, the more you get out and the more rewarding it is, I suspect. Tara, do you want to just observations on the MEC?
Absolutely, I would say the same for the MEC. So there are particular focus around our member engagement strategy and the events and the sort of activities and interventions that go on around that. And we do ask that our MEC members are involved in that programme, which will start again very much in September this year, following a year of things being suspended due to COVID. There is additional meetings that are slotted in from time to time. Particularly recently, we've had a joint board and MEC meeting that was focused around our young members network. Again, looking at how those two boards work together, but also other roles involved in our environmental steering group and also our grants panel, which looks at all the grants that come in from our regional communities, but also our wider Mid-Counties Community Fund. There's a reasonable amount of background reading to meetings, predominantly 4/5 meetings a year, but we are quite active in between meetings as well as. So again, quite often the MEC in some cases, and for some of our board members, has been seen as a stepping stone to a board role, but not necessarily. You know, there's different variations on that within both board partnerships. Next slide, please.
Great, thanks. And then this is just some nuts and bolts again, the sorts of things that members need to know if they want to put themselves forward. For this year, nominations for election open in June 14th, close in July. On the board, there are 5 vacancies. You're on for a 3-year term. You've got to have spent as a member £500 within the 12 months before you put yourself forward. There's a fee. If you're new to the board, you would need to, so you're not standing for re-election, you would need to attend a candidates forum where we run through some of these things in more detail, other points about standing for the board. So just occasionally, some members can't meet the qualifying period. Must have been a member for 12 months, for example, or the spend criteria. So it's just being aware of those facts, but hopefully those are no bar to any one of you who here are interested in the role. And then they're less of a hurdles for the MEC, but you can see them there written down. Oh, and yes, the final point there is just to note that voting is running through September this year, and then we announce the results in October. So that's it really. We've got a discussion now, and we thought we might kick off with Tara just firing some questions at some of our current board members to help get people thinking before we can kind of open it up. So you're going to fire away? Indeed,
indeed. So, you know, as I've put a note in the chat there, please ask any questions that you want to in the chat. This is very much an informal session. Imagine that we were all in a room together with a cup of tea and ask the questions that you would like to ask about this. Excuse me, my eye is running extremely. So from our board members that are on the call at the moment, I'd just like them to, a couple, maybe we start with Olivia, Bernadette. Why did you choose to become an elected member in the first place? Maybe we ask Olivia, if you'd like to respond to that question first, please.
I think because the co-op is different, you know, we own this business and you have a say in this business, and you can participate, you are elected democratically, and I like being part of that. And it's a huge sort of cooperative. As you get into it, there's a huge cooperative umbrella that you fit under, not only in the UK but you know, globally as well. So it's just being part of that.
Okay, that's lovely. And maybe Bernadette, can I ask you the same question, please?
Of course. The reason why I wanted to get on, be elected onto the board was because I want to make sure that members as well as colleagues are represented on the board. And I think sometimes the board in themselves just need that little bit of extra knowledge from the colleagues that they may not see themselves. And so that's why, one of the prime reasons why I wanted to be on the board.
Thank you, Bernadette. That's really, really insightful. And I think, yes, I think it's important that we point out that there are 2 positions on the board that are colleague member positions. Is that correct?
No, 4.
4.
Well, up to 4 colleagues can be on the board. That's the way it works. Yeah. Okay,
but we've currently got
2.
2. Yes. Yeah. Sorry, my apologies. Okay. So next question. Maybe Barbara. Could I ask you, what do you enjoy most about the role of being a board member?
Meeting the members and the colleagues. The co-op is such a fantastic place to work for. And on the member days and the store openings and all those sort of events, which I've really missed over the last year, you get to talk to people, and the long service awards, people who've joined the co-op from school, and then they're still there years and years later. They've moved up the ranks, and having been on the board for a while now, seeing colleagues grow and stand up at the AGM and give talks when when, you know, they joined at 18 or 19 and they couldn't possibly imagine themselves standing on a stage, and that's really rewarding.
That's great, Barbara. And if I can ask a question, I think Matt Lane has joined us as well, and as Matt actually joined us as one of our younger elected members, and he's been supporting heavily with our young members network, which has been amazing. But Matt, I know that you juggle working full time and a number of other responsibilities and being a director. And could you just share for people what that means for you, how you manage to juggle those roles?
Well, we'd hope so. Maybe we've lost Matt.
Maybe. Well, we know we've got Helen and we've got Olivia. Again, I know, Olivia, that you're juggling a number of roles, but maybe we start with Olivia first with regard to a full-time job and director. Then ask Helen if she wants to chip in, and if Matt has dropped out.
No, he hasn't dropped out. He's still there, so we'll see. Oh, there you are, Matt. I heard a male voice.
It was just my audio. It's quite ironic that I'm one of the youngest members of the board and can't make the audio work on this call. But so yeah, thanks, Tara. I don't think working or being a director on the board take up nearly as much of my time as being a dad, commitment-wise. But juggling all three is it's certainly a challenge sometimes. But I think that on the whole, we do work in a way that allows working people to both be a part of the board and really contribute. And I think that even on the board, there are levels at which you can contribute. Of course, there are different committees you can serve on if you want to increase your time dedication, or you can do the minimum required, which I think is fair to say is still quite a commitment. But there are certainly different levels at which you can commit to the board. But yeah, I'd say on the whole, most meetings are conducted in the evenings, or at weekends, with the occasional strategy day thrown in for good measure. So yeah, it is a challenge. It is a significant commitment, but I think you absolutely can work it around being a full-time employee somewhere.
Great, thank you for that. And maybe just because I invited you and then we stopped, maybe Olivia, Helen, if you'd like to add to that about juggling different roles and being a full-time board member.
Yeah, it's Olivia. It's a challenge. It's helpful that the majority of the board meetings are in the evening, so it doesn't really impact your day if you have a daytime job. So there is a workaround. There are quarterly board meetings which are on a weekend, a Friday night and a Saturday. So again, that's a workaround. So you can balance it all out. There is an awful lot of reading. You have got to set aside time to read your board papers. It's not just quickly flicking through. You really do need to sit down and allocate good reading time. But it's doable, but you just need to be organised.
Great, thank you. Helen, would you like to chip in there as well?
Yeah, I probably sort of reinforce what both Olivia and Matt say. Although I did just, when I disappeared off screen a few minutes ago, I went to check that I'd turned off the iron, which I was actively ironing before we came on here. Just goes to prove we can multitask. I think being organised is really important, and and I think for me, I've sort of in my time on the society, I was a colleague, and but I've also then sort of brought up a family, worked elsewhere, so I've sort of seen it from all aspects really, and I found that this is doable, but I think you also have to be sensible about what you commit to doing. As president, clearly I have extra commitments which I'm required to undertake, And you can't undertake those activities unless you're willing to spend that time. So the basic commitment to the board, as Matt says, people need to think about and think whether it fits into their lifestyle and their life planning. But it's it is something that the most important thing for all of us is that commitment to cooperation, the commitment to do the work and work effectively with your colleagues. So that's my best advice, really.
Thanks, Helen. And Henry and Barbara and Bernadette, I mean, clearly from an MEC point of view, the commitment is slightly less on the MEC than it is to be a director. Maybe, Henry, you want to talk about why you became an elected member and what you find the commitment is doing that role as a sort of MEC member.
Yeah, why did I join? Well, I'm retired, have been for 4 or 5 years. And before that, I was involved quite a bit in buying groups. I was a retailer and belonged to various organizations. And I like the idea of cooperation and achieve better results, obviously, when you're buying as a large group. And I thought, when it came up, I thought, well, that sounds interesting. I didn't really know an awful lot about the co-op. I'm not sure that I still do yet, but I'm still learning. Yes, I stuck my name in there and I worked out my speech and my address and everything. Only to be terribly disappointed, of course, it was automatic election. There weren't enough people standing. So you missed that. You'll be glad to hear. So yes, the actual commitment, I would find it easier being a face-to-face one, going into Warwick and having meetings. It's an easier way of doing things, but never been that good with technology, I think. But it is, yeah, it's not a heavy commitment, but it's a reading up round it as much as possible, which I'm still trying to do. And in fact, on the grants panel, which I'm on, I've really enjoyed doing that. I actually spend far too much time studying the applications, their websites and things, to work out whether or not it's a legitimate application. Not so much on the small ones, which an easier one to do. But no, that I particularly enjoy. So yes, I don't think I'll stand for the board this year. I don't know enough yet, but maybe in the future. We'll see how it goes. But age is not on my side, I fear.
It's certainly also not a barrier, Henry. So it's certainly not a barrier either.
Well, I'm sure, but yeah, there seems to be so much more to do when you're retired. I don't know why.
Good. Okay, so Bernadette and Barbara, your role, you said the MEC role for you. How would you say the difference between the two? You've experienced both.
Actually, I'm on the MEC as a board representative, but I've never been on the MEC as an ordinary member. So I think Wendy was.
Yes, maybe. Yeah, absolutely. Bernadette, your thoughts around the commitment on the MEC?
Again, I wasn't on the MEC as a colleague. I was there as a director. So, and because I've had quite a long space of time before I was re-elected as a director, MSC has changed. Its name has changed as well, which I have to get used to saying because otherwise I always mix it up. But to me, the people on MSC, I think they get a really good insight to what does happen, especially on open days and when they come and they go to stores with the directors, which has happened before. I think they get a really good idea of what we're going to expect of them if they become a director. And I think it's a really good stand-in for it.
That's great. Thank you, everybody, for your contributions. We've actually got a comment in the chat. So Greta is asking, do you have a person spec for the roles? So Edward, do you want to?
Yeah, so we can probably open it up as widely now to everyone who's in the room, so to speak, fire away with questions. either with hands up or in the chat. Yes, it's the answer for the board directors. We do have a person spec. Will you find that on our website? You'll certainly find it around nominations time, and we can send you a copy easily enough. That's no problem. It's quite lengthy. Again, the key thing it does emphasise, there'll be some common traits that lots of organisations will share, but it does focus on, a commitment to cooperation, which of course is absolutely crucial if you want to be a strong cooperative director. For the MEC, I don't actually think we do have a person spec for the MEC itself. You could treat it as a subset of the board, I suppose. So what it says for the board would carry forward to the MEC as well.
That's great. Have we got any other questions from our guests this evening regarding it? Any specific questions they want to ask any particular board members, myself or Edward? Please put your hand up now or just jump in. There's enough people on the call for you just to jump in if you want to. Please remember to take yourself off mute.
Tara, could I just quickly respond to the last question as well, whilst you wait for some questions to flood in, I'm sure. So I think what's particularly unique about our board, and one of the reasons I'm particularly proud to serve on it, is it's just how diverse it is in terms of the backgrounds and skills different people bring to the board. And I think most most boards in the UK have requirements in terms of qualifications or experience, and the Mid-Counties Board doesn't really have that as such. It's a different sort of set of requirements. We have people who founded businesses, who work in the society, who don't work, so have retired. There's from across a massive breadth of industries, and I think that brings a real diversity of opinion and experience to the board that we really benefit from. So I think regardless of background and experience, I think as long as there's a commitment to cooperative values and serving members, then you have an experience and an opinion that's valid to our board, and I think that's what's unique about us.
Thanks, Matt. I think that's a really important point. I think we've got some questions now. We've got Brian. I think you've got your hand up, so if you'd like to take yourself off mute, feel free to ask your question.
Or do you want to keep trying, Brian?
Sorry?
Oh, we've got you there now. Yeah.
You got me there, have you? Do I wait to appear or shall I start talking?
Start talking.
Well, I've tried to get on the board, as I think Edward knows. It seems to be a bit of a lottery to get selected, but it's an interesting exercise, and I will be trying again. I'm really going to ask Edward as much as anybody. I mean, do you honestly feel you have a balanced board with this form of selection? My feelings are that the point I'll mention now, the gender balance is quite interesting now. It's about 11-4, I think. And you know which way around that is. So who does the voting? I think probably most of the shoppers tend to be women, and I have a feeling there is a bias towards women being selected, but that's not a problem. I think that's tremendous. But a board for me, and the boards I've been on, you do need a balance of skills and experience, and it takes a long time to get that, because in some ways, we should be there keeping an eye on the management board, and I don't see much of that perhaps taking place. So do you feel the system we have, I know it's a members company, we have to go that way, but does it really give us a balanced board that can actually challenge the management of the various businesses? Because, I feel that one of the problems we have is we are so diverse in businesses that we don't pay enough attention to where the money has to be made to support those community services.
So you've answered me. Brian, do you want to come off, go back on mute then, just so that we lose the echo? Great, thanks. I think that might be worth finding out the views of board members, because, I mean, from my point of view, I think the boards I echo what Matt says earlier on. Actually, it's a good diverse range of people with good diverse range of life experiences from a different range of backgrounds, and I think that's pretty strong. So it's not all corporate. It is all cooperative, as it should be, because all directors are committed cooperators, but it's not all corporate, and that's really important. And you've got people from a wide range of backgrounds, and that really adds, I would say, from my observations while I sit in all the board meetings and so forth and observe what's going on, that adds to the strength of the board. Now, people might say, well, he would say that, wouldn't he? But there you go. You can take it or leave it. But perhaps some other directors might have a view to share there, in which case chip in.
I'll probably chip in. I think it's, what I would say, Brian, is I guess it's having, until you see the board in action, it's quite hard to understand the processes that we go through. But actually, when you say holding management to account, that's part of the one of the main functions of the board, which we do. And so it's something that I feel very strongly that the board does. We regularly, obviously review both the financial performance and the cooperative performance. And there'll be times when the financial performance, clearly isn't where we would want it to be. But we review the actual processes and the thinking behind that, and we do hold the exec to account. And I think it's very difficult from, as I say, until you actually see what happens at that and what the board does to go through that processes, to say that we don't. When, let's say, from internal point of view, I believe that we do, and I think my fellow directors will agree with me.
Yeah, no, I'd certainly echo that, and just add that I think for me, like, a central tenet of being a cooperative is that the board are elected by the members, and I think as soon as you try to add process that controls who might or might not be based on experience, I think that's quite a dangerous road to go down. But I should also add that I don't think we're it was interesting, Brian, your point about a lottery elections. I think we've spent quite a lot of time, particularly recently, even today, in fact, talking about the how people stand for the board and the election statements, and how we allow people a decent platform so that members can make a really informed choice about who they're choosing to be directors of their society. In fact, I think over the last couple of years we've spent, I've been on the board now 9 years. I've been elected 3 times, been fortunate enough to serve for that long. And I think over the last couple of years in particular, I think the amount of debate in the board about how we keep fresh turnover of people on the board with diverse set of experience and backgrounds, while making it as democratic and as fair and as open and as transparent as possible. Yeah, like I said, takes up a good amount of discussion at a board level. So it's something we're not complacent about, and we'll continue to work towards. So yeah, any feedback you've got, having stood for the board, on how we can make the process even better, is always welcome.
Yeah, the board would never want you to move away from the democratic underpin, though. So that's a big watch out for that. It's been very clear since I've been with the society that the members' view is sacrosanct, and you'll see that in some of the governance arrangements we have. We don't, for example, have independent, professionally appointed external directors on the board, and so forth. But we can probably move on now. I know, Adrienne, you've had your hand up for a while. Then we've got Geeta and then Stephen. So, Adrienne, do you want to let us know?
Hello. Yes. It's been good to hear what you've all had to say. Can I ask a question that's really aimed at existing directors? And it's, what do you see are going to be the key challenges over the next year or so?
Who wants to pick that one up then? Silence is essential. We let the president lead, and then the other directors can chip in.
So, well, I do have to give a note of caution that I don't expect to see my words in anybody's election speech. All right. So, clearly the challenges are coming out of COVID and coming out of the pandemic. You know, we've had a very clear strategy over the last sort of 12 months. You know, set internally as a result of the pandemic, and you know, that is. You know, initially it was making sure that we were set up and ready and geared up, supporting our colleagues, looking after our colleagues, and supporting the vulnerable members of our community. And then it was how we start to bring our businesses out of hibernation and into this new world. And the next thing is how we sort of thrive in this new world. So there's some really, you know, sort of important and some key strategic measures sort of coming into place to ensure that we, you know, sort of essentially the focus on hitting the ground running as businesses reopen and looking at the new opportunities perhaps that have come up as a result of COVID. So, you know, without being specific, that's, I think, is the process that we'll have gone through.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone care to elaborate onto that?
And just, I mean, I guess just to add, one of the key elements, I think, for that is the issues regarding mental health. And I think mental health awareness for everybody, you know, going through in the next sort of period is going to be really significant. Something we focused on with colleagues, but, you know, we realise it's a wider society issue, and that's something that, you know, I think we're all very aware of.
Yeah, I don't mind jumping in and adding something. So I think an ongoing challenge is, or opportunity, actually, not challenge, but is how we engage with members as the business adapts so much. You know, so for example, we've become a much more digital business in the last year, and I think that's been a great strength of the society. Is, you know, so much of the country's been locked down. We've all headed onto the internet to get much of what we need. But I suppose one of the challenges with that as a cooperative is how you engage with your customers and ultimately your members. And I think again, something that takes up a lot of time at board is how we engage with members. And I think now that's evolving and changing quicker than ever before. And I think that will be something over the next year we spend a lot of time on.
Great, thanks, Helen and Matt. We can probably move to Adrian. You haven't got any follow-up to that, have you, from what you've heard?
No, I'm quite happy with that. Thank you.
Good. Okay. So Geeta, it's your turn next. Your hand was up next. Far away. Woo. You're off mute, but I can't hear you. I don't know if anyone else can. Do you want to just try again, Geeta? Let's go back onto mute and then come back off again and see if that makes a difference. We've lost you, I'm afraid. So maybe if you type into the chat your question and we can cover that, we'll move on to Stephen and then come back to you then. Should we do it that way then, if you don't mind? And hopefully we'll cover it off, even though it'll be a bit weird with you just typing in. So if you do that, Geeta. Stephen, do you want to come off mute and fire away?
Well, my comment, forgive me, it's somewhat vague. It's akin to an observation. Brian is referring to previous board experience, but there's very ordinary, humble beings like myself. I've quite a deep interest in the mid-counties. I've been at the AGMs for years, the 6 monthly meetings, etc. Yes, I believe in the mid-counties. I wouldn't be here otherwise. But people like me, we don't feel we've got the skills to contribute to the board, even if we were to stand. Or if we did stand and get in, we don't want to take the failure if we can't actually cut the mustard when we're there. So I get held back by my own lack of confidence to even stand, I suppose I'm saying.
Steve, maybe, yeah, go on and fire away, Bernadette. Yeah.
Yeah. So from my point of view, what you're saying is, when I first went on the board, which was sort of 2013, 2012 was the first time, round about then was the first time that I was elected onto the board. And trust me, it doesn't matter what background you've got, as long as you can talk and you can read what's going on and are able to say and question what the management are doing, you'll be fine. There is no commitment, and there is help there as well. If you need it, if you didn't understand anything, there's always Edward to go to and send emails, or to Helen, or any other member of the board will always help you and make sure that you feel that you would be welcome if you were elected. So don't put yourself down for that. Get out there and do it.
There's one of our directors who's no longer director. He always summed up what he felt the skills and experience, to use a phrase, was that a director would require, and we've put that, for whatever reason, we've put it at the back of the remuneration report. And I could refer you to that, Stephen, and you'll find it. It's just a couple of paragraphs long. I think that sets out very well what it means to be on the board and what we hope people will bring. It's not rocket science. It's people who are willing to contribute and have come from a wide, diverse range of backgrounds. So I'd urge you to have a look at that, and hopefully that would encourage you not to feel so reticent in putting yourself forward. And yeah, give me a call or speak with other directors.
Can I just jump in as well? Sorry, Edward, and that is, I really do believe that there is a certain amount of trust that we have in our members. Our members elect their board, and I don't think the members get it wrong. I really don't. Somehow we do this democratic process, and the members either, I mean, it's a little bit unbalanced at the moment with the gender, but for many years it was absolutely down the middle. And I don't know how the membership, and it's a lot of them, when you're getting votes of 26,000, whatever, it's a lot of people voting. It does work, and I completely and totally trust the membership and the members. That's my input.
I think that's completely right, Olivia, and I think, Stephen, that really is what that election statement is all about. It's about explaining what your experience and perspective it is, and ultimately letting the members decide if they think that would make you a good director. It was interesting hearing my colleagues on the board's response to why they stood for the board. My initial reason 9 years ago for standing for the board was that I felt that I could bring a fresh perspective to the board because of my age, actually, because I could see that there wasn't a lot of representation from younger people. And the most unique thing about our society is that we are owned by our customer members. So really, if you're a customer, then you're a member, you can bring a very unique perspective to the board just by being a customer, and just that in itself is quite unique, I think. So yeah, I'd urge you, if it's something you're interested in, to pursue it and have the confidence to put yourself forward.
So Stephen, any follow-up? Otherwise we can move on.
Well, I genuinely believe I could contribute something, but you would rightly say you will say that. But because I just, my mindset, my wiring, my upbringing, we all in my family, we just think a bit differently. And I think every organisation would benefit from a sort of Alan Turing type, or the Dominic Cummings type. We won't get controversial.
I don't know about Dominic Cummings.
But an organisation sometimes could do with somebody who just looks laterally at things and doesn't quite think the same as others. They work with a team, but just slightly different. But I don't know if I could do that or not. It's up to the members, even if I stood. So we'll see. Thank you.
It is down to the members. That's right. So Geeta, I think your sound's sorted out now, so we'll jump back to you, and then I've seen Marianne's got put some questions in the chat, and then Brian, I'm not sure if your hand's still up from previous or whether that's a new question. So let's go to Geeta first, and then we'll move on to Marianne, then you, Brian.
Well, let me just see if you can hear me first.
Yeah, yes.
Oh, gosh. So my technical skills were up to Matthew's then when he wasn't able to get online. I was just interested earlier, one of you touched on, the fact that we're part of a national and international movement, So when I think of, Spain and Mondragon, for example, I think it was a couple of years ago where, there's that thing about how much the chief executives can earn, and the differential between, the other workers. And I believe that there was something that went to a vote where staff and other members said that they didn't want the unhinging of that link, as it were. So perhaps there was a push to try and do something around chief executives' pay. And I think that's quite a powerful thing, isn't it? As a co-op model as compared to other things. So I just sort of wanted to kind of touch on the fact that, we do operate, or the co-op does operate as part of an international setup, and different organisations do things in very different ways, which perhaps in England we tend to be a bit kind of more timorous about these types of things. So somebody put in earlier, it'd be interesting to know what sort of discussions you have on the board, possibly about these kinds of issues, which it kind of gets to the nub of the values, doesn't it?
I'm going to land that straight to Matt, who's chair of the Remuneration Committee. Matt, I don't know if you want to respond to that.
Of course, yeah. I think we should probably take this in two parts. One on the subject of remuneration, but also perhaps Helen could talk about the broader discussion and work we do on an international basis. But yeah, on the point of remuneration, so we talk about pay ratios, and actually they're reported on in the remuneration report. I'll be talking about it at the AGM this week. I think we're in a good place on pay ratios. I think we're, when you benchmark us against FTSE 100 and 250, I think I'd have to check the numbers, but I think it's about half the differential. So
that's about right. Yeah.
Yeah. It's something certainly we do look at and keep an eye on, and it's something we're challenged on every year. Actually, I think when I stand up and do the remuneration report at the AGM, I think one question I can always count on being asked about is pay ratios and differentials, and I think that just demonstrates how important that is to members. So I think it's only right that we keep a close eye on it. And what's most important for me is that actually not the absolute numbers, not even to a certain extent the benchmarking against other businesses in the UK, but the direction of travel. And for the last 3 years, our pay ratios have improved, by which I mean decreased. And I think that's really encouraging, because our members certainly want to see that, and I think at the board we want to see that too.
Yeah, and if I could just add, I think that as a society we're very well aware of the international co-op movement, and our role and the part that we play in that. We have our own vote as a member of the ICA and Co-ops Europe, so we have opportunity to influence matters there. Pete Westall, who's our Chief Values Officer, is part of ICA working groups, and we regularly connect with co-operators around the movement, and I always staggered by the figures around the percentage of people in the world who are part of a cooperative, and it's something like sort of 1 in 10 people in the world of employment age work in the cooperative sector in some sort or other. So there's some fascinating statistics, and I think if in terms of economic impact. The economic impact for cooperatives, particularly for women around the world, is phenomenal. So, and that's, sort of, as we see the impact, particularly of COVID, has been disproportionate of women in the workplace. We can also see how cooperatives are helping women across the world and globally to actually maintain their family life, to maintain the workplace, and support that. And women, in a lot of countries are, particularly, I think last year they did the ICA meeting in Rwanda, the fact that, there is a whole generation of men lost in that country, so that women need to be economically active, and cooperation has supported them. I don't know, Pete, if you wanted to just add a few words about our ICA work.
Yeah, thanks, Helen. It's a great question. One of the big things, I think, is the ability to share best practice and knowledge. Never fails to amaze me how widely known mid-counties is across the globe, particularly, I've got to say, our childcare business, but equally things we can learn. It was touched on earlier about member engagement and so on. The S Group in Finland, whether it be Rabobank, the list goes on of great cooperative examples that we can learn from and hopefully share best practice with. So it's part of our imagined future. It's principle about being links with co-ops around the world, and it's something which I know the board support, and I genuinely think we can learn a lot from and share a lot from.
Good, thanks all. Marianne's put a question into the chat. Marianne, do you want to expand, and then we'll see who could perhaps cover this off?
Yeah, thanks, Edward. Yeah, so basically, just as I think Matt touched upon it, that, this year we've had a lot of challenges thrown our way, to say the least, and actually we've had to adapt quite quickly and find some different ways of communicating and engaging. So I think there's a bit of a start, stop, continue there, but I suppose as we sort of move out of, I know we're still very much in COVID, but I suppose as we move with government guidelines, as restrictions are lifted and we get back to, dare I say it, living more normally, what plans do we have sort of from the board perspective or the MSC with regards to how we will engage with members? So that's both sort of the re-engagement with existing members and perhaps people we've not been able to communicate with through the digital channels, but also looking to attract new members as well.
Yeah, Tara's happy to kick off on that one. Well, no,
sorry, that was my apologies for getting that I'm in the same room as Edward. That's not helpful. So yeah, Marianne, that's a really great question, and part of what we've been looking at, certainly these conversation events that we've been holding over the last week, really is us testing what works, what doesn't work in a digital forum, but also clearly looking at how we can use that to reinforce what we do at a local level with our members, as well as, and certainly how we re-engaging with existing members and attracting new members is part of what we're looking at as part of the membership proposition, and certainly some of what you'll hear at the AGM on Thursday from Phil, where we will be launching member rewards going into the summer, but also looking at how we can ensure that there is something for everyone. We want to be a really inclusive cooperative, making sure we have a mantra that nobody is left behind. So ensuring that our membership is as diverse as the communities that we're working within, but actually we are as an attractive membership proposition to all of those communities and the differences that they bring. So a lot of work going on currently with that, but certainly I would hope that a number of you I know have attended virtually some of these conversation events that have been really quite engaging and been able to reach out to a wide range of members, and something that we believe we can build on going forward.
Thanks, Tara. Has anyone any other thoughts on that particular matter? Otherwise, we're close to wrap-up time. Julia had a very specific question, which probably, again, Tara, you might like to quickly cover off.
Yeah, sure. So
this is in relation to the MEC.
It is, Jules. So thank you for the question. And yes, so understanding, you know, can you do as much as you decide at a local community event as an MEC representative, or do you have to be invited by the society? And again, you'll know that there are different levels of engagement, and clearly our colleague elected members, and Bernadette being one such member, will tell you that it's a fine balance between, you know, doing the job that you're paid to do as well as the additional role as an elected member. So it is seen as an additional role, but clearly it's integrated. So there are some you know, sort of negotiations in the middle with regard to how those two things are balanced. But you know, opportunities for all elected members to get involved in what's happening in their regional community as an active member. But as a colleague, clearly there's also that to be balanced with the consolidation of the day job. Does that answer your question?
Julia, any follow-up from you? That sounds like a no. So that's good. Adrian, your hand is up. I don't know if that's an old hand or a new hand. That sounds like that's an old hand then. So we could do a final call for anyone, because I mean, this is timing rather well, actually. It's just coming up to 6 o'clock and there's another conversation coming up shortly. If anyone has any other comments or thoughts they might like to add in, fire away now, because speak now forever you'll hold your peace. Oh, Stephen, your hand's gone up, and then we will be able to wrap up shortly. So go on then, Stephen.
Quick question, how many days or hours a week would a board member typically put in?
Whoa, it's a difficult one.
Yeah.
Anybody want to volunteer an opinion there?
Yeah, I will. It depends how much you want to be involved. But if you're a co-op person, then you want to be involved as much as possible and get as much from it as possible. So I mean, there's a board meeting once a month, but normally then we've got some store opening or some events or members' days or something once a month that you would go to. So that's 2 days to start with. Certainly if there's travelling and things, but and there's different ways to get involved as well. Like we were talking about earlier, the diversity of the board. It is so important to have those different people on the board, because if we had 16 accountants, then it wouldn't be any good at all, because we employ accountants. What you know, Stephen was alluding to earlier, it is really important to have people who have ideas, who think differently. And every time we get a new director, you know, when we have the elections and there's new people join, it gives a complete different perspective to the board. We still get everything done that we need to get done. We still hold the management to account, but it just makes it much more interesting and much better. So it depends how much you want to get involved, really, and what sort of things you want to get involved in. I hope that does that answer your question.
I think as a rule of thumb, when it comes to board meetings, effectively you can double the time at least in terms of the prep, so that, you know, when you think about the ongoing reports that we get from management, and the amount of the sort of the board papers. So it really depends on the board agenda and the specific details. But in terms of the pure board meeting stuff, you know, you can't turn up to a board meeting and open your board papers. You know, I'm being very clear about that. You know, none of the board members do that. There's a sort of and people will look for different things, and people will bring out different things, which is the beauty of the diverse board.
Thanks, Helen and Barbara. Does anyone else have any other quick follow-up questions? Speak now or forever hold your peace. Brian, go on then. You'll need to come off mute, Brian.
I find the conversation very interesting, and I think that it's an exciting prospect if one can get on the board. You know, I knew nothing about the Co-op until we moved to an area where you had a Co-op store, and you know, I've got a lot of respect for everybody there and spend a lot of time talking to the staff. I can see many things that we can do to improve it, but overall, I'm really pleased that we have a Co-op here. If there's a Tesco on the doorstep, would one make that the place of priority? But I mean, here in Church Stretton, it's very much the place of priority, and I know everybody really appreciates what you offer. So thank you for giving us your time this evening. That's all. That's what I really wanted to say, Edward.
Well, thanks, Brian. And if you come off mute, there won't be an echo. Yes. Thank you, Brian, for those kind words, and I'm sure the current board members will appreciate them as well. Okay, well, I think that's, well, it's time to wrap up now. So you'll see on the slide that's been sitting there, the shameless plug for the AGM, which is in a couple of days' time. Hopefully you'll all turn up and hear how the society has been getting on over the last year. And an even more shameless plug to vote for us at the in the Co-op of the Year awards. But of course, the key events really was just for you to perhaps get a greater understanding of what it's like being on the board and the MEC, and to be able to feel you've had the opportunity to ask your questions. So hopefully that's worked well. Please, if you've any more follow-up thoughts or comments or queries, what have you, just get in touch with me. And if I can't answer them, I'll make sure that they are answered for you, because it's a big decision if you want to stand. Don't take it lightly, but I think I could speak on behalf of the directors. It is pretty rewarding. So let's hope you'll be putting ourselves forward or thinking about it very hard. Okay, all, thanks very much.